The Ultimate Warrior wasn't just a wrestler. He was like a fever dream you got from licking a radioactive paint can. Fans remember him sprinting to the ring, shaking the ropes, and cutting promos that sounded like a toddler having a stroke during a sugar rush. But behind that cartoon on cocaine persona was a man who managed to piss off more people than airport security. Wrestlers hated him, promoters dreaded him. Even the ring ropes probably considered filing restraining orders. This ain't me talking. I didn't grow up getting body slammed by a man covered in day-glow war paint and incoherent threats about the galaxy. But the people who did? They've gone on record, again and again, to say Warrior was a dangerous, delusional, narcissistic migraine with muscles. Think less locker room leader and more a roid-raged motivational speaker who thinks gravity is a government lie. This video is a roast, told through the eyes of wrestlers who had to share a ring with this neon war god. So don't blame me for the hate. I'm just relaying the shoot interviews where legends drop truth bombs like Warrior dropped the ball. Let's get into it. Bobby Heenan hated the Ultimate Warrior so much he probably made voodoo dolls with tiny neon armbands. To Heenan, Warrior wasn't just reckless. He was like a Looney Tunes character who escaped the TV and started handing out concussions. Heenan once called Warrior a dangerous moron, which, coming from Bobby, is like the Pope calling you a sinner. The Brain was done after working one too many matches where Warrior hit stiff as hell and sold offense like he was trying to get a tax deduction on pain. He didn't know what selling was, Heenan said. He thought it was something you did with a used car. This wasn't bitterness. Heenan got injured legit in a spot with Warrior, and not in a cool war wound kind of way. More like, I trusted this clown to pull a spot, and now I can't sleep on my right side. Bobby's heat with Warrior ran so deep, he once joked that Warrior was the only guy he ever saw wrestle gravity, and lose. To him, Warrior was a backstage migraine who didn't respect the art, the craft, or the basic human instinct to not knock someone out when they're trying to work a match. Bret Hart worked like wrestling was chess. Warrior worked like he was playing Hungry Hungry Hippos on meth. Bret once said, and I quote, "He didn't understand psychology at all. He'd just run around shaking ropes and hurting people. That's not a gimmick, and that's the behavior of a kid who drank too much cough syrup and thought he was Thor." When Bret tried to plan out matches with Warrior, he got blank stares and cosmic babble. "The gods will guide us," Warrior reportedly told him. Yeah, well, the gods forgot to teach you how to take a back bump, bro. Bret wasn't just mad because Warrior was stiff. He was mad because Warrior treated the match like he was alone. It was like performing a duet with a guy who brought a tuba and kicked you in the shin. In a shoot, Bret said, working with Warrior was like babysitting a drunk bear. Big, loud, unpredictable, and likely to accidentally kill you while trying to high-five. The Hitman respected almost everyone, but when it came to Warrior, he kept it real. This wasn't locker room politics. It was pure technical disgust. He was a body, not a wrestler, Bret said. A great entrance, but that was all. Andre was a gentle giant, a mythic man who could drink 100 beers and still carry a midget to safety. But Ultimate Warrior? Warrior made Andre want to stand up and choose violence. Andre didn't hate many people. He just hated people who didn't respect the business. Warrior was Exhibit A. Andre told him to slow down in the ring. Warrior looked at him like he'd just asked him to recite Shakespeare. So, next match, Warrior runs full speed, and Andre clocks him like TSA, checking you for weapons. Wham! Warrior falls like someone pulled his plug. Andre stood over him like, "I told you, motherfucker." Jake Roberts backed it up. He hated Warrior, wouldn't even hide it. He used to put Warrior in his place mid-match. That's like having your grandma ground you during a bar fight. You know how chill Andre was? He let Randy Savage elbow him in the chest 15 times a week. But Warrior? One ultimate splash and Andre was like, "You do that again, and I'll rip your face off and use it as a knee pad." Andre didn't need words. He had a boot the size of a Honda Civic and no time for roid-fueled ring hoppers who treated wrestling like a cage-free therapy session. Ultimate Warrior pulled more ransom jobs than a Nigerian email scammer. He never even wore a ski mask when at SummerSlam 91, Warrior shows up backstage and tells Vince, "Pay me $500,000 or I'm not going out there." That's not a contract negotiation. That's a heist. That's some Ocean's 11 level nerve. Dude held the main event hostage like he was Samuel L. Jackson in a Die Hard sequel. So Vince, swallowing the anger like a man biting into a lemon made of bullshit, cuts the check. Warrior does the match. He comes back through the curtain like he just saved WrestleMania. Vince hands him a FedEx envelope like, "Congratulations, you played yourself. fired on the spot like a dude who farted in church during Easter service. And Warrior kept doing this. He wanted his own dressing room, his own plane, his own comic book. Man really thought he was Tupac with tassels. Vince finally had enough. The man who kept Snuka out of prison, let Austin walk out, and still took punches from Bret Hart, said, You're too crazy for me. When the guy who invented the XFL says you're the problem, it ain't business anymore. You're just a delusion in face paint with a bad attitude and a death wish. Jake Roberts didn't hate people lightly. He hated Warrior like a man hates termites, silent, relentless, and capable of bringing the whole house down with enough time. Jake called him a cancer in the locker room and said working with him was like dancing with a chainsaw. Jake actually tried to help Warrior once. Vince McMahon told Jake he'd be working a program with Warrior. Roberts was excited, until Warrior screwed it up faster than a cokehead at a sobriety checkpoint. Warrior no-showed meetings, forgot promos, and treated every segment like he was being abducted by aliens mid-sentence. He was the most unprofessional man I ever worked with, Roberts said, and I worked with a junkyard dog when he was out of his mind. Jake's promos were about snakes and psychological warfare, but even he couldn't psych out Warrior, because you can't mind game a guy who left his brain in 1988. He wasn't bitter. He was disgusted. Warrior took money, time, trust, and torched it all. Jake still talks about him like a man who's processing trauma. You can almost hear the DDT in his voice. If Bobby Heenan hated Warrior's brain and Bret Hart hated his work rate, then Rick Rude hated Warrior's whole damn existence. Rude was a professional. Mustache, abs, psychology, the works. Warrior was a guy who looked like he bench-pressed vending machines and talked like he got hit by one. These two were oil and water, except the water had talent and the oil was Warrior. Rude had to carry him, literally. Warrior's idea of a match was sprint, shake ropes, kill someone. Rude's idea was tell a story and not die. That's a conflict of philosophies the size of WrestleMania. During their 1989 feud, Rude sold like Warrior was the Terminator. And off-screen, Warrior stiffed him constantly. Rude, being a throwback badass, once threatened to knock Warrior out mid-match and make it look like part of the show. Jake Roberts said it best. Rude hated Warrior so much he'd almost made a new finishing move just for him, the fist to the face. There's footage where you can see Rude getting angry during a match. His expression shifts from pro wrestling to murder mystery. Warrior would potato him, and Rude's jaw would clench like he was doing math in his head on how much time he'd do for assault. And the wild part? Warrior needed Rude. Those were some of his best matches. But he never thanked him, didn't appreciate the carry job. To Warrior, selling was weakness. To Rude, Warrior was the business's biggest mistake in face paint. As Rude once said backstage, he's the kind of guy who steps on your face and calls it a handshake. So, what have we learned here, folks? That it's possible to get massively over, headline WrestleMania, sell mountains of merch, and still be the most universally loathed dude in the locker room. The Ultimate Warrior wasn't a heel in the ring. He was the final boss of backstage politics. Ask Bobby Heenan, and he'll tell you Warrior had the ring instincts of a concussed mule. Ask Bret Hart, and you'll hear tales of rope-shaking, soul-crushing chaos that made him want to leg-lock a brick wall. Andre didn't speak much, but he spoke boot. Vince McMahon, a man who once booked Katie Vick, still looked at Warrior like, yeah, nah. Jake Roberts? The man once made a python the second most terrifying thing in the building, and Warrior somehow out-slimed the snake. And Warrior himself? He was a one-man spiritual crisis. A motivational cult leader trapped in a He-Man figure. No gimmick ever exposed how thin the line is between charisma and carnage more than his. The man was built like a Greek statue and booked like a tax audit. Loud, explosive, and guaranteed to ruin your week. He left a legacy, sure. But it wasn't a legacy of respect. It was one of bafflement, back pain, and a trail of broken egos wondering how the hell they lost to a guy who looked like a Muppet on pre-workout. This wasn't a hit piece. It was an intervention. And judging by the testimonials, that spaceship Warrior kept talking about, everyone else just wanted to throw him into it and launch him into the sun. Load the rocket fuel into the comment section of Destiny. Type your thoughts like they're etched in the scrolls of the gods. Subscribe, not for me, but for the warriors who came before, the spirits that run wild in the algorithms of YouTube eternity. And if you dare, like this video with the intensity of 1,000 suns bursting through the cosmic veins of the ultimate channel, feed the algorithm or be devoured by it. Thanks for watching.